G'day, Ziggy here, author of Money Does Grow on Trees, and welcome to this episode of Plan to Prosper. We have a great guest lined up today. Her name is Jelvie Grech, formerly Padalinga. I get that right, sorry.
You gave it a go.
I gave it a go. I should be better, because with my Greek background, I should be better, but it was Pangalinga. Okay. Hey, that's Indonesian, right?
That's Indonesian, that's correct.
Indonesian, right, awesome. So, look, I mean, we've got a lot of things to talk about today, and I'm really looking forward to our chat because I think there's a story there of resilience, of leadership, of, a difficult childhood, extremely difficult childhood, and that's made you the woman that you are today and shaped you. But just before we talk about, leadership, resilience and everything, you've achieved, I really just want to get to know more about your story. So tell me about your grandfather.
So I have probably stories about each of my grandfather. So we'll start with the one that's my mother's dad. So I found out a lot of things about him, I think, when we moved to Australia. But he was actually someone who grew up in Macau. And Macau at that time was a Portuguese colony. And what he did was, because they were very poor, he had a younger sister. Apparently he stole just some food to feed his younger sister, and he got arrested. And he thought, well, I'll get arrested, they'll put me in jail. But what they did is actually put him on a ship. And the next time he touched land, he was actually in East Timor, which is extremely far from Macau.
How old was he at this point?
He was 17 years old.
17? He was only 17?
Only 17, so didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Never saw his mum again. His sister managed to visit him in East Timor, but basically from 17 years old, he just stayed in East Timor. He said he just followed people around asking for work. And, he figured out, hang on, there's a lot of Chinese people in East Timor, starting businesses, working, etc. So he decided it would be a good idea to import Chinese goods and start selling it. So he did that, and he managed to build himself a bit of an empire, just importing goods. He opened up shops. He had trucks taking goods into different towns in East Timor. And that's basically his story of just survival, of resilience, but also having that vision of, I want to do something with my situation and not let it actually take over. So he ended up with just, properties. He had coffee plantation, sugarcane plantation.
That's amazing. Can I just stop for a second,
Yeah,
right? Because we've gone through a boy at the age of 17 to now he owns multiple businesses and
Correct.
He's running. And so did he know why he was being shipped away from Macau to East Timor?
Look, I don't think it was something that he knew would happen, definitely, but it made sense now because East Timor at that time was also a Portuguese colony.
Right.
And I'm not sure if the Portuguese just thought we need more people to populate East Timor, or we need more
This
workers
17-year-old looks like a smart kid.
17-year-old looks like he's street smart. So that's where he ended up. And, if you think about all your ancestors, the people that's come before you, for him to do that, that's the reason why I exist, right?
Huge.
So when you make that connections, you think about all these people who survived situations, who overcame, just so then to make room for you to actually be here.
So what do you think would have been going through his mind at the age of 17?
Oh, look, I know he missed his mum very much, and he really cared for his younger sister. So I think for him it was, he felt like he had no choice. He just had to do whatever he could at that time. But he did manage to invite his sister over to visit him. And, when she came, he was quite prosperous. He was quite successful. So for her to see that, that change was also incredible because they came from a really poor childhood. But what's funny is my mum would get annoyed because people who knew his story basically knew him as a thief.
Because he stole the food.
Because he stole food. So his nickname was Thief.
Thief.
And it would annoy my mum so much that, people would call him that. So I asked her, like, why do people call him that and why does it annoy you so much? Oh, it's because they keep labeling him as that, but he's so much more than that. But I said, that's his story of how he came to East Timor and how you came to exist. But it just tells me as well, like, despite the labels people put on you, you can keep going and you can just do something completely different.
That's powerful. So there's a mother who is looking. Oh, it's getting me emotional. There's a mother who is looking at her son and saying he's so much more.
Yes. So I just think, that story is something so powerful that I don't want to waste it, if that makes sense. So for me, when I look back at all the people who, my parents and my grandparents and the people before them, those stories really matter. And we sometimes discount it because we think, we're going through a hard time or we're going through some challenges. And I think about the challenges that they went through and what they overcame, because they just had this thing where I have no choice. I have to go through this and I have to get through it. He ended up having 20 children.
20 children?
Yes. So I think he was...
How does anyone look after 20 children? 20 children.
He was building his own workforce. What can I say?
He was building more than a soccer team. It was a workforce. I like that.
Yes, it was a workforce. But what I did admire about him is he was able to provide for his 20 children. I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of children, but you hear stories of, I was never cared for, I never experienced equality. But he did provide for everybody that he had.
Talk about someone who was prosperous, really.
Yes.
I mean, we use the word prosperity loosely, and it usually has, money connotations. It's usually financial. But talk about someone who was prosperous, to have 20 children and to provide for them. And he did, part of it was stealing. And I mean, who's gonna haul him over the coals for that?
Yeah.
But he went on to, build all these businesses. So this would have been just a time of, and I guess as the children, they just would have been all looking out for each other. They would have been so close.
Oh, look, I think they experienced the war as well. At that time, they wanted the Portuguese to leave East Timor. So you had the militia. Then you also had the Indonesians coming in, because East Timor was really divided into three. One wanted Portuguese to stay, the other wanted East Timor to be independent, and then the other wanted Indonesia to come in and make East Timor part of its provinces. So, and the Indonesians coming in, that's really the story of how my parents met, because my dad's father was recruited as the Indonesian intelligence, because he spoke fluent Japanese, Dutch, English, and Bahasa. So
he was a spy.
He was a spy, and he's got his own story of when he was first recruited because of his Japanese, and that time Japan had entered Indonesia, I think during World War II, I guess.
Yes.
So his mission was to work as an order taker in a Japanese tea house where the generals would come in, and he actually looked Japanese as well.
Right.
So his features, he's from an island called Sulawesi in Indonesia, and that part of Indonesia, they look a bit more fairer, but he just looked Japanese.
Yes.
So that's where the generals would come in and actually talk about strategy, where they're going to place their troops, where they're going to go to next. So he would listen to all this whilst, taking their tea order or whatever it is, and he would throw out the order in the bin, and then another spy would come pick it up in the back of the tea house.
No way.
Yeah, so just incredible stories again, all the things that he would have seen and gone through as well. It just encourages me. So whenever I go through, challenges or just, life, I just think back to, hey, my grandpa survived this, so I could be here.
Yeah.
And that's really how my parents met, is my grandfather had to then bring in the troops from Indonesia into East Timor. And, there's a lot of stories in the war. There's always loss. There's always just tragedy. But I think I always have to keep that in perspective. Like, I don't really take sides because I was actually born in East Timor.
Right.
But yeah, that's how they met, and that's how I came to be as well.
So talk about prosperity, because this is a man who sacrificed his life
Yeah.
for his family, and it was almost like he could foresee down the track that his kids would learn from him, learn from being together, learn from being in. I guess there would have been some poverty initially, but he
Yeah.
was successful. But learn from that and be prosperous, themselves.
Yeah, look, I think if we talk, you always hear stories of people who are prosperous and then the next generation kind of loses it all. I think, to be honest, the generation that came, like, so my dad's generation, my mum's generation, there were some who were quite responsible with the legacy that's been left, and there were some who were not because they just didn't have the education.
Yeah.
I think, and this is what I learned from all that is I need to equip, my children. So then, because we had to start again from zero, we lost everything. The war took everything, and then also the lack of education about financial literacy, for example, basically took everything.
So what happened there? He's gone from, being successful and then the war. So what happened?
So with my Chinese grandfather, let's just call him that,
Yes.
the one with 20 children, I think, the war stripped a lot away. And, he had his eldest daughter, which is my auntie Netta, I call her. She was probably the matriarch of the family because their mum passed away as well. So she took responsibility of the 20 kids whilst, her dad started rebuilding again. Because he had to, get rid of a lot of his wealth just to buy his children's safety. They even put him in prison because they called him a communist.
Wow.
Right? So you had people accusing him of being a communist. They were like really jealous of his success. And he had to just give whatever he could to make sure that his kids weren't taken by the militia. It even got to a point where he said to all his daughters, because they're at that age, teenagers, who the militia could just come in and just take them away into the mountains. He said to them, turn your clothes inside out, put dirt on your face, do not wash, because I need you to be unattractive.
Wow.
I need you to be just awful so people are not going to be attracted to you, because that's just survival. So my mum had to do that because, she was like 15 at the time. And then they'd imprison him. They'd go searching around the house. He'd hide gold in the ceiling, so they took it all down. They'd look at all his watches. He had... My mum said we talk about online shopping now. She said, I used to get my dresses from Europe.
Really?
Yeah. She's like, if we wanted a sewing machine, they'd fly it down from Singapore, like from anywhere.
Wow.
So it was that extreme, I guess, wealth at the time. So, for him, unfortunately, only my auntie really understood what all that meant, what it took to actually get there. Whereas the rest, I don't know if they were spoiled or whatever it is, they just didn't have the tenacity to, I guess, keep it going. So during the war, she just said, well, we have nothing. Like, they had to hide underground. They had to just eat whatever they could find. One of the brothers, he had to just go searching for food, and he saw one of the militias basically who was being shot. He took his uniform, put it on so that he can go into the militia camp and just get any food.
Wow.
And he'd bring home just corn kernels that, has already rotted, and they just wash it away. So you're going from someone who had like 20 servants in the house to then living in a bunker, trying to make do with these rotten corn kernels to have as a meal. So it's just such a contrast, right, in their lives. So my auntie was just like, okay, we've got to start again. And they didn't have anything to start with. So she approached a lady who owned a dress shop in East Timor in the city. And she said, look, I've been paying attention and you're not selling any dresses, right?
There's the entrepreneur coming out.
Yeah. And she said, if you can, give me 10 dresses. I can't pay you now, but once I sell them, I'll give you the money, right? And because she
And
just
thus
needed
we have
something.
consignment, stock on consignment.
Correct. So she took that and she was really smart. She goes, well, in the city, you know, it's not selling because there's a lot of people selling dresses, but in the countryside and the regional areas, they don't have access to that. So she went out there and she started selling 1 or 2 dresses, and then people came up to her and says, "Oh, do you have any matches? Do you have any kerosene? Do you have any cigarettes?" So she realized, hang on,
There's a market.
there's a market here. So she started, like, you know, after selling one dress, she'd go and buy all these things and then resell them back into the village. So they started looking forward to her coming around. And from that, she actually built a really successful business. She opened up shops again. She bought trucks. And then when she had to leave, she went to Portugal because of the war. The Red Cross said, we can pick up people. And she was savvy because she goes, well, my dad, so, you know, my grandfather, the Indonesian one, he could sign off on a lot of documents to make passports.
Right.
So when my parents were getting married, she said to my mum, you need to buy your wedding dress from Jakarta because I need to go with you and I need to get all our passports done. So then they had that plan as well. So she was very savvy at connecting the dots and going, what can I do in these opportunities instead of just sitting on my hands? What can I do while I wait? So she did that. So she left her business with her brother, but, you know, he wasn't very good with business, so he lost it all again.
Right.
While she was away. So again,
I was going to ask you about that because
Yeah.
with 20 kids, you know, your mother was very successful and entrepreneurial, but not all the 20 would have been.
well, my auntie was very smart. My mum kind of didn't really get a chance to do any
Okay,
of
so
that.
it was your auntie.
My auntie, yeah. Well, with the 20, there were some, but a lot of them sort of just waited for opportunities to come. A lot of them were just, you know, they just worked. They just had jobs. I think my auntie was the one who would have the initiative. She was very much like her dad, and I think he taught her a lot. And she was the one who paid attention. You know, you can have a lot of kids, but not all of them will pay attention.
Was she one of the older ones?
Yeah, she was the oldest girl.
Because I remember you were saying to me at one point that having an apple was a luxury.
Oh, yes. So what happened was, because my dad is Indonesian, he said to my mum after I turned 1, he said, let's all go back and let's all go and live in Jakarta. So I never knew my mum was actually not Indonesian. So we went to live in Jakarta. And, you know, my grandfather, who was a spy, he passed away when I was about 6 or 7. And that's when we realised actually we had been living a good life because he was around. But once he passed, we didn't know, we didn't even own that house we were living in.
But
So
you thought you did.
we thought we did. And the landlord came knocking and says, where's the rent? And we're like, what are you talking about? So we were homeless. We had to split up because we were all living together with my grandparents, my aunties and uncles. All of a sudden, you know, all my parents could afford was a room in someone's house, right? So we went from, you know, all these properties in East Timor. Well, my mum went from that luxury lifestyle to then Jakarta, where it was good. And then all of a sudden my grandfather passed away and we were pretty much homeless. All we can afford was this one room. And I remember my auntie, so the one that was very business-minded, she was living in Australia at that time. And she would send us money every month just to kind of help us survive. And so every time she would send money, Mum would go to this place where you can make collect call. So it was a
Right.
business and all they do is collect calls. So she'd get her money from the bank, pay the lady at the collect call place, and we just kind of sit there whilst we listen to her tell my auntie, oh, you know, thank you, we've got the money. And my auntie was like, well, get something nice for the kids. So something nice was we went to this international supermarket and Mum said, you know, I used to eat lots of apples when I was growing up. We would get them from outside of East Timor. And I said, what's an apple taste like? You know, because, I mean, we have mangoes, rambutan, like all the local produce, but apples don't grow in Indonesia. And Mum said, look, they're very expensive, so we can only afford one. But we're going to take this one and we're going to enjoy it at home. So we were like really careful. We didn't want to touch any apples. We just let Mum pick one because she's like the expert in apples. And I had my little brother there. He's 4 years younger than me and he's just wide-eyed going, what is this fruit?
Yeah.
So every month that would be like our routine of just celebrating. So we'd get home, Mum said, all right, I'm going to peel the apple. And she peeled it in a way that it was like a long snake, right?
Yeah.
And so my brother and I would be like just looking in wonder, and we'd smell the skin. It smells so sweet. And Mum said, all right, now I'm going to have to actually divide this in 4. So Dad can have a piece and guys can have a piece each, and me too. So she did, and we were like just taking little bites so we could savor it. And I remember sitting there going, this is what being rich feels like.
Oh, wow.
You can have an apple.
Wow.
And it was ridiculous because when we arrived in Australia, I would have 6 apples a day and my brother would have 6 oranges a day because we were like, we're living it up now.
Yeah. Splurging. That is so amazing to be at a point where today here we can just have an apple, and if it's a slightly brown, you go, throw it away. But at that time, this was gold.
Yeah, and you know what? Apple's probably the last fruit I would reach for now because I think I overdid it when I first arrived. It was like 6 apples a day was a lot.
Well, it's probably kept the doctor away, as they say. So he sacrificed everything, and so you've had this time where things have collapsed. You've had the war, and then you've split this apple the 4 ways. Did you know you were poor?
I think, it hit me at one point when, I came home with my brother and, I was probably around 7 or 8 years old at the time. He's 4. And I couldn't get into that room that we were renting. And I realised my parents were both out. My mum was probably looking for my dad because it would be payday and she didn't want him to spend all the money and she'd want him to, make sure we can pay the rent and the bills. And so I broke into our own place because the window was open. So I climbed up and my brother's there going, I'm really
How old was
hungry.
your brother at this point?
He was about 4 years old.
And you were?
I was around 8.
You were 8 and he was 4.
Yeah, 7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he's like, I'm hungry. And I looked in, there's nothing. We didn't even own a fridge because food was scarce. There's no leftovers, no such thing. And I remember saying, okay, let's just go and see Grandma. So we walked over, which is like a 20-minute walk to my grandmother's house. She wasn't home. She was a midwife and she would often be out just helping people. People couldn't pay her either. So they'd give her eggs or bananas, whatever they grew. So she was always short of money as well. And she had a small pension that she got from my grandfather who was a spy. So she wasn't home. So I said, listen, we're going to go to one of our neighbours' house and they make food that they sell. Now, you've got to pay attention, I said to him, because we don't want to embarrass Mum and Dad. So we're going to go there and hang out until it's dinner time. Because of their hospitality, they're for sure going to offer us to stay for dinner. Now, I'm going to say no. I'm not going to eat because they're not wealthy themselves. They're just making ends meet, and whatever I eat is going to take food away from their kids. So I was 8 years old already thinking like this, right?
Wow.
And I said to my brother, now you're going to say no twice, and then when they ask the 3rd time, that's when I want you to say yes because I know you need to eat. He's like, okay. And I said, remember, don't say yes the first 2 times, just the 3rd time. So anyway, so we were there hanging out with their kids, and then, of course, dinner time came. They said, do you guys want to eat? And I said, no, I'm fine. Mum's got something cooking at home. I'll be okay. And turned to my brother and, are you hungry? He goes, yes.
The first time.
We spoke about this. He had one job. But then I realised, hang on, I can't do this every night because it started happening regularly. And I thought, what am I going to do? For me, my priority was always my brother. And so I said to him one day, listen, I need you to just stay with Grandma. There was my auntie looking after him. And I said, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do here because I can't do this every day. So I went to the market and I'm looking around and I was like, God, just give me something, right? And I only started going to church too with my grandma. And for some reason, she's not Chinese, but she went to a Chinese church.
Right.
Right. So I learned about God. I'm like, all right, God, just show me what to do here. And I started noticing people walking out with takeaway food and they're just, all the food would be tied up with elastic bands and they'd chuck out the elastic band and just be all over the market. And I thought, geez, that's brand new. They're just chucking it like that. So I started picking them up.
So that was your prayer. Your prayer was, God, what do I do here? As an
Yeah.
8-year-old,
Just give me
being
something.
resourceful to look
Yeah.
after your brother,
Yeah.
you're asking,
I need to eat.
give me something. I need to eat.
Give me something. And I thought, all right, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went around just picking up these elastic bands. And I thought, okay, I've got about 100. I ran home, washed them, and I just bundled them up. And then I just said, all right, what's next? Went back to the market and just walked around. And then all of a sudden I hear someone from one of the stores going, hey, do we have any more elastic bands? They went to the back. So I'm paying attention. I'm not even saying anything. And the guy at the back's like, no, it's all, we don't have stock. I was like, what do you mean? You didn't order any, all that sort of stuff. And then I said, hey, I've got elastic bands. And I showed him. He's like, oh, how much do you want from it? And I said, I've got 100. How about you just give me 100 rupiah? Because I knew 50 rupiah gets me a bean curd, a fried bean curd.
Right.
And that's got protein in it. And that would be good for my brother. All we needed was a bit of rice. I said, well, give me 100 rupiah for them and you can have them. So he did, right? So
Didn't try to bargain?
No, I didn't try to bargain. Because I just said, look, you need them. I've got them. Let's just
do the deal.
Do the deal. And I don't know how I did that when I was 8. So then I went and bought 2 bean curds, so 2 tempes, and it was fried. It was beautiful. I had some rice that I found somewhere, one of the houses. And my brother ate really well that night, And I said, I'm going to do this every day. So I did that every day. Now I wasn't thinking, hey, maybe I should have employed other kids, get them to sell it. But I was just like, if I can make at least 50 rupiah every day, then my brother can eat. I don't care if I ate or not.
Wow.
Didn't matter. But then something happened and there was a house. So I had all these elastic bands left and I thought, I've got to get rid of them. So I knocked on this lady's house. Now, I didn't really know her. I knew she did catering. And she opened the door and I said, look, I've got elastic bands. Do you need them? Because I know you prepare food and you sell them. And she said, oh, yeah, sure. Like, how much do you have? I'll take them. So every day if I had leftovers, she would always take them off my hands. But one day she said, oh, look, come in because I've got to get my purse. And I went in and I saw where she was preparing her food. She had so many elastic bands.
Oh, right.
She didn't need them.
No way.
And I said, what are you doing? Why do you waste your money on me? You don't need elastic bands, but why do you keep buying them? She's like, what kind of 8-year-old goes around selling elastic bands? You're not going to do that unless you needed to.
Yeah.
So she's like, if I can help take them off your hands, I will. And I just thought, I don't even know how that happens. But I said, well, I can really trust God in providing what we needed. And I know it's not like, well, why didn't he provide you, a whole table full of food?
Yeah.
But I appreciated what he could provide. And for me, again, my priority was my brother. So if he could eat and have a full stomach at the end of the day, then my job is done. But then I'm like, all right, what else can be done here? I can't, be building my elastic band empire every day.
Yeah.
I had school. So I went to visit a friend. And, when we were wealthy, I probably have that time. When we were wealthy, we had friends who were wealthy. And this particular friend was quite well off. And I remember he's sitting in his living room and he had all these bookshelves just full of comic books. And I said, man, you've got so many comic books, and they're Indonesian ones. And he said, yeah, my uncle works in the printing company. So he brings me all these comic books every week, the new issues. He's like, to be honest, I don't really like them.
So were these Spider-Man, Phantom, those type?
No, they're similar to that, but Indonesian
Indonesian
heroes.
ones, right.
Right. So I said, hey, do you mind if I take some and I'm just going to start renting them out? But I won't let people take them home because they're yours. I can rent them out and just make them read it in my shop. Well, I didn't have a shop. He's like, take whatever you want. You don't even have to bring them back. I said, look, I'm happy to give you 70% of my earnings. He goes, no, I don't need the money. He's like, just take them. So then I'm looking around, where's my, the best position to have this comic book shop? And there was a mosque nearby. And every time, the service would end, prayer would end, there's a lot of people that came out. So I found someone with quite a big porch that just was on the street. And I said, oh, do you mind if I set up my comic book shop on your porch? I can give you whatever money I make. I can give you some of it. And I'm like, no, just do it. Kids are always mucking around in our front porch anyway. So I found this huge cardboard box that someone threw out. So that was like the flooring of my shop. And I just laid out the comic books. And people started coming and they're like, oh, how much is it to read one? I said, it's 50 rupiah. So I was making a killing. Like,
Wow.
I can actually buy fried chicken for my brother. And I was like, he's like, oh, you can buy fried chicken now? I'm like, yep, we're up there now. We've made it.
Yeah, we've made it.
We've made it. And I
That's
remember
gold.
like walking into just the corner shops going, just get whatever you want, because I was just making that much money. But then my dad found out and he shut down the business.
Why?
Because in Indonesia, if your kids work, even, here it's quite normal for teenagers to work at McDonald's. Over there it's not. It's kind of saying that your parents are too poor, that they can't afford to support you. That they've
embarrassed.
had to, it's an embarrassment. So he was like, how dare you embarrass me? And he basically came in and destroyed like my shop. And I thought, I'm trying to feed your son, and it just wasn't something.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, it was horrible, because I'm thinking, how am I going to feed him now? I wasn't even thinking, oh, look, all the money that I could have made. For me, again, it was like, how do I get this kid a meal so he doesn't go to bed hungry? But luckily after that, we were able to come to Australia. So I didn't have to think about doing that anymore.
So, elastic bands,
Yeah.
comic books, small business, the age of 7. Did you
Yeah.
know you had an entrepreneurial spirit in you?
No, to me, it was just survival.
Survival.
Yeah. But what I think about now is, a lot of people stay in that survival mode even after they no longer need to be. But I'm very careful not to do that. I'm very big on celebrating the wins, no matter how big or small. And I'm very mindful of not being stuck in that survival mode, because it can actually make your life difficult. And you see everything always as a hurdle when it doesn't need to be. But yeah, definitely it wasn't, hey, I'm so business-minded. I actually didn't see myself as business-minded until probably 5 years ago. But yeah, it was just survival.
I was going to ask you about that, because scarcity, difficult times, if you let that, it can become part of you, a big
Yeah.
part of you, rather than just being your story, it becomes you.
Who you
But that
are.
didn't for you. You saw it as an
No.
opportunity, and you were so resourceful, and you saw opportunities, and you just went, well, I think you would have had it in you, but what was driving you more than anything else was looking after your brother.
Yeah, and I think that still resonates today. Like every time I do something, it's always if I do this, how can I actually lead me to serve others? So even with networking, something simple, right? A lot of people will only start networking at the point when they need something. I'm going to start networking now because I've lost my job and I just need to get another one. For me, I actually don't network when I need something. I network when I think someone might need something from me. So it's a different approach.
Switching it around.
I'm switching it around.
Yeah.
So even with work, what can it lead me to do? With teaching, how can I help my students transform, so be better than when they first came in and joined the class? Conversations, how do I intentionally add to someone's life? So a lot of things that I do is actually driven by someone else's need. And that's probably why I think, I'm an introvert, but I've had to put myself in situations that's not comfortable, such as this
An
one.
introvert that's now on a podcast.
Such as this one. Yeah, because I just think, well, if someone can hear my story and actually look at life in a different way, get themselves out of that scarcity mindset, that survival mindset, I can just help one person, that's mission accomplished for me.
Well, you've helped me, Jelvie. You've helped me, and there's still a lot more to talk about. Well, I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of the episode with Jelvie Grech. Make sure you subscribe so you can stay connected and so you don't miss the next episode with her, which is part 2.